Hi. Let us now start assessment criteria 2.1 and look at the theory component for assessment criteria 2.1 in the module brand proposition. So here's what we're going to cover in this unit. We're going to look at how brands are defined and positioned in the mind of the customer in order to add value to the organizations. In particular, we are going to look at some important theories. First of all, we are going to look at the alignment, how important it is to align your strategic vision, mission, and brand proposition. If there is misalignment, then the organization definitely will not be positioned in the mind of the customer clearly. Then when we look at branding, we're going to look at a host of meanings from what do you mean by a brand's purpose? And we're going to look at many international examples. What is brand equity? The value of the brand management, brand vision and brand identity, brand innovation. We're going to look at the importance of trust in terms of the authenticity of the brand and the transparency of the brand. We're going to look at the architecture of a brand, the components of how a brand is made up, brand perception, how a brand is perceived by others, and how a brand is positioned in the mind of the customer. So there are a lot of important words here, and you need to distinguish each and understand the meanings separately. We're also going to learn an important theory by Kapferer. It's called the Kapferer's brand identity prism. Kapferer's brand identity prism. And in that, we're going to learn an important theory. And finally, we conclude by discussing customer journey and customer personas. Okay, so let's get started. So what is a brand? Now, the American Marketing Association, the AMA, defines a brand as a name, a term, a sign, a symbol, or a design. I'll repeat that: a name, a term, a sign, a symbol, or a design, or a combination of all these, which can be used to identify goods and services of a seller and differentiate themselves from that of competition. If you look at the history of branding, guys, branding goes back a long way into the kind of Anglo-Saxon kind of era. We're talking about, many thousands of years ago, right? Even before money was invented, people engaged in barter trade. And the history of branding by Kevin Lane Keller in his book, Kevin Keller tells us that those days people used to have a lot of cattle. If you're rich today, you have a lot of vehicles, a lot of land, and a lot of cash today, and a lot of gold. Those days, if you were rich, you had the biggest amount of cattle. That's why sometimes they exchange so much of cattle when there are marriages. In some countries, it still takes place, like in Africa. In Africa, in Kenya, when I went there last year, in Kenya, Maasai men can marry 4 women. They can marry more than one woman. And I met a man who had 3 wives. And they're in the same community. 3 wives have 3 huts. right? Three wives have three huts and they are friends. They have a lot of children. And the male is married to three men. Now, why am I telling you all this? So when I asked him, of course, in private, how you manage this, three wives in three huts with all the children mixing with each other, playing. And the three huts are next to each other, made out of clay. How do you manage this? How do you, how did you get married to your second wife? Then how did you convince your first wife and the second wife about bringing another wife? So he basically said he gave more cows, more cattle to the second wife. And when he got the third wife, he had to give cattle to the third wife, and the first and second wife's family also he had to give cattle. So he also said, in some cases, the bride has to give cattle to get married to a man. So the bride's father has to give cattle. Still, in this world, it is happening. So now, basically, in that kind of environment, whoever who has the largest cattle, which is cows, calves, all those kinds of animals, are the richest. So when all these cattle, thousands of cattle come into one mountain to eat grass, how do you identify whose cattle it is? You start to brand them. You start to brand them. You can see a modern way of doing it with a number on the ear like this. But those days, they didn't do it like this. They burnt them. They burnt the cattle. And that is how the name branding was born. The brand name, the word brand is to burn. The word brand is called brandir. It is to burn. I don't know what language it is in. You can Google it. So the word brand is brandir, which means to burn cattle, to burn a clay pot and put your signature of the potter. That's the kind of era we go with branding. So branding precedes even money. Okay. It is used to identify the potter, the person who makes the clay pot. It is used to identify the owner. So you brand by burning the cattle's flesh so no one can steal it. You can easily identify. Today, maybe you don't do that, but I still, even in Sri Lanka, that you can see when you go to the villages, cattle, you have pingona and various things written on the cattle's body, which means don't kill this animal, he belongs to someone. Branded, right? So I think you learned a little bit of history about branding. This is the definition. You need to study it. Why brand a product? There are many reasons. A host of reasons. This is from my book, the chapter on strategic brand management. It reinforces and instills the seller's quality of the promise of quality, helps differentiate, helps identify, adds value, promotes a segmented offering, attracts a high quality, encourages consumers to pull the brand. So there can be a list of reasons, so many reasons as to why you would brand a product. And brands too have objectives. Now, if you take a company like Nestle, Nestle has so many product categories. Home care, personal care, cooking, like this. So each, like even if you take Unilever, each category will have many brands. Sometimes a category will have, in Sri Lanka, 10 to 15 brands. Same with Nestle. So each brand will have a brand manager. So the brand manager will report to the category manager. Category manager will report to the marketing director. I hope it is clear. right? So when you look at the brand's objectives, this is what the brand wants to achieve. Remember, objectives must be smart, specific, measurable, achievable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. So you can have examples like this. To achieve a positive brand image score from 31 to 40, you can see it is measured. Increase brand awareness and unprompted recall score by 10% among this target group. Extend the brand into 2 new segments. Practice line extension into 5 different types of variants. Increase the brand equity score by 15%. These are all very good examples. Climb up the brand finance, LMD, interbrand, brand ranking. So I'll take you through the rankings in the next few slides. So I hope this is clear. We have objectives that we have for each brand. And this is sort of what we discussed as a theory in the previous chapter. The value proposition canvas. I hope you can remember. You have to find a fit between the value proposition that the company is configuring with the consumer's demand. You have to find that fit. So this is very, very important. A company will have a vision, a mission, and it will have values or a proposition. So the brand value proposition is a statement that defines what a company offers to its target customers. Please study this definition. This is the definition of a brand value proposition. It's a statement that defines what a company offers to its target customers to differentiate itself from its competitors. It communicates the most significant, important benefit of doing business with the company and why customers should choose it over other options. So there are many examples I'd like you to look at. And we will investigate that with the definition of what a brand purpose is. Another word for purpose is the mission. Mission. Another word for purpose is the mission. So brand purpose is the reason for being. Why are you in this world as a brand? What are you trying to achieve? The thing it stands for, aside from the usual business goals and objectives. This is why, right? Why are you doing this? What is the reason? So it is usually to do with customers it serves and the market niches it seeks to fulfill. So let's look at some examples of brand purpose statements. Apple's brand purpose: to challenge the status quo and to think different. Coca-Cola's brand purpose is to refresh the world and inspire moments of optimism and happiness. I like the Harley-Davidson: to fulfill the dreams of personal all-American freedom. Let's look at the Disney: to create happiness for people of all ages, everywhere. So to some extent, when you look at this, you can understand the ethos of the brand, the purpose of the brand. Microsoft: to empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more. Google: to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And these are some top brands in the world. I mean, I can't think of a brand that is a bad brand here. They are top brands today. Tesla: to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. Facebook: to give people the power to build community so that we can bring the world closer together. And finally, Starbucks: to inspire and nurture the human spirit, one person and one cup at a time. So these are purpose statements. They are not really objectives. They are broader than objectives and stands aside from the usual business goals and objectives. What is their mission? What is their purpose? And when we talk about brand equity, guys, the word equity means the value of the brand. And if you are to build the value of the brand, every brand will have a value. I'll give you an example. Look at Louis Vuitton's value according to Interbrand. 2024, right? Look at Louis Vuitton's value, Tesla value, right? Look at the most valued brands according to Brand Finance. Apple is at number 1. Look at the equity of the brand. $516 billion and growing year on year. Number 2 is Microsoft, 3 is Google, 4 Amazon, 5 Samsung. And you can see the US dominant brands here, but increasingly you can see Chinese brands today making it to the top 20. How many Chinese brands? You can see ICBC, TikTok, State Grid, and then the China construction, whatever. I don't know what that company is. So there are many banks, many large companies here. Bank of China, right? And then you can see US dominated, some German brands as well. And of course, a South Korean brand up there. Toyota has gone down, Japanese. So Japan has lost quite a bit, but gaining a lot is China, right? And you can see the TikTok's relevance. No wonder US is banning TikTok, right? Because it's so popular. So coming back into the value of the brands, the equity of the brand, the value of the brand. And all these guys will have this intangible asset, The brand value is an intangible asset. Some companies take it into their balance sheet because the balance sheet has tangible assets. Some companies take intangible assets also, like patents, copyrights, brand equity into their balance sheet. But there's a danger also in doing that, because if you take the intangible assets completely 100%, sometimes if your brand equity drops, then your balance sheet will contract a lot. So you have to be careful. Therefore, some companies only take a portion, 20 to 30% of their brand equity to their balance sheet with the permission of accounting standards and auditing companies. Right? So the equity of the brand is the value of the brand. It's useful if you're selling the brand to someone. Then they know you can pay for all the equipment and tangible things, but what are you paying for the brand? And that's the equity of the brand. So the equity of the brand, according to these authors, can be increased by increasing the awareness of the brand. If you look at Coca-Cola, Apple, everyone knows those brands, Google. The loyalty of the brand, the perceived value of the brand, and the associations that the brand stands for. So if you increase these 4, you will go up this ranking. You will go up this ranking. This is the Interbrand brands ranking. Interbrand is a US company. Interbrand is a US company, right? This is the Brand Finance, which is a British company. 2 leading companies that do brand valuing, right? So what is brand equity? Brand equity is the value of the brand, the dollar value of your brand. So that if you're only selling the brand, now let's say Nestle will want to sell Kit Kat. So if you're selling Kit Kat to PepsiCo, only Kit Kat brand, you want to sell it to PepsiCo, then the Kit Kat brand will have an equity, a value for that brand. Only for the brand name. So you can just then sell it off to someone saying, here's the value of this brand. And sometimes the value, the equity of the brand is about 500 times bigger than the fixed assets of the brand, right? The intangible brand value. It's based on the idea that a recognized brand that's firmly established and reputable is more successful than a generic product. So if you're non-branded, paracetamol versus Panadol. Paracetamol is a generic. Brand is Panadol, Panadine. Aspirin is the generic. Disprin is the brand. I hope it is clear. So you have generic. If you go to the pharmaceutical industry and go to state pharmaceutical corporation in where do you get state pharmaceutical corporation, right? It is near Odell, near Salaka. You go there, you can buy generic non-branded medicines. And it is far cheaper, 10 times more cheaper than the branded medicines. Same thing, supposed to be same thing, but the moment you brand it, it's expensive. So sometimes doctors ask patients to go to state pharmaceutical corporation and buy medicines because it's much, much cheaper. You're not paying for the brand. It's also based on customer perception. Sometimes you go to buy a product, if you feel that the price is not very high, then you think it's something wrong with it. This can't be real. So branding messes with your mind in terms of quality, in terms of price. So that is called perception. Perception is how a customer would see a brand. What is your perception? As a person, what is your perception? How will you see me? That's the perception. Perception. It's a psychological word. It's also based on customer perception, how they perceive the brand. Customers will tend to buy a product they recognize and trust. So brand manager's job is to build that recognition, that awareness, and the trust. So if we look at Interbrand, which is a global branding consultancy, US company, they look at 10 factors, internal factors and external factors, in valuing their and coming up with this brand ranking each year, right? They look at brand clarity, the commitment of the brand, and you have their definitions here, the protection of the brand, the responsiveness of the brand, and external factors like the authenticity of the brand. How authentic is the brand? Now, some of these words you can Google and find out the meaning, but it is expressed here as well. The relevance, the level of differentiation, consistency, the presence of the brand, like Coca-Cola, present everywhere in the four corners of the world, and the understanding of how consumers recognize the brand. So when we look at Brand Finance, which is also a global leading consultancy, Brand Finance has a ranking each year. This is 2024. The world's 25 most top valuable brands. You see Apple coming right on top. Apple coming right on top. So this ranking I've been following now for over 20 years, and it keeps changing. Good old days, we had Coca-Cola right on top, Google right on top for a long time. Then after Apple took over, it has not changed. Apple has been consistently managing its brand according to this company's standards. And brand management, guys, I have given you this book by Kapferer as recommended reading. You don't need to read the entire book. But he's a top author, J.N. Kapferer, on strategic brand management. He defines brand management as a broad term used to describe marketing strategies to maintain, improve, and bring awareness to the wider value and reputation of a brand and its products over time. Strong brand management strategy helps to build and nurture closer relationships with its audience, right? So it's a broad term. to employ marketing strategies to maintain, improve, and bring awareness. Maintain, improve, and bring awareness to the equity or the value of the brand and create a reputation, to create a reputation. So this science is called brand management. And it is only learned by doing. I was a brand manager for 4 years at John Keells. I quit a very high paying sales job, came to 1/3 of my salary from a very high paying sales job and joined John Keells. It's one of the most difficult choices I made in my life. I went backwards in my life in terms of salary, and I selected a brand to manage. It was very tough. It was very tough, but I learned a lot as a brand manager, and that really helped me become a marketing manager, then a sector marketing manager, then a senior marketing manager, and then I joined the banking industry. So brand management is only understood by getting your hands and feet dirty. You have to roll up your sleeves and learn it from scratch by doing. Okay? You can't only learn it in books. And according to Kevin Lane Keller, the strategic brand management process has 4 steps. His entire book is built on these 4 steps. Strategic brand management. To identify and establish brand positioning and brand values. To plan and implement brand marketing programs. To measure and interpret the brand performance. To grow and sustain brand equity. So you can see the 4 steps covered in so many chapters across this book. So you will learn some of these theories in this course, and I would encourage you to read this book and watch the videos by Kevin Lane Keller that I've given you as well. So what is a vision? A brand vision. Here are some examples. BBC, to be the most creative organization in the world. These are very, very broad vision statements, not objectives, not goals. Disney, very simple, to make people happy. Google, to provide access to the world's information in one click. IKEA, to create a better everyday life for the many people. So we now are going to look at some key terms that we investigated before. Brand identity is how you identify the brand, the color, design, the logo. If you look at the Shell brand, you know, the Shell logo, it is a shell, yellow color, red and yellow. You can easily identify it anywhere, even when you're driving. It's all over petrol stations. Shell brand. That identify and distinguish the brand in the consumer's mind. It's a consistency of expression in messaging. So identity, this word identity is how do you identify the brand? And also human beings are brands. How will people identify you? Do you always like one color? You have a name, you have a signature. And what do you consistently behave as? Consistency of expression. Just like a product, individuals are also brands. Don't forget that. So these are the things that you manage as a brand manager. You manage the consistency. You manage the transition of the logo, design, color schemes. So you can see sometimes the success of some of the liquor brands. I mean, vodka is one brand that has consistently been vibrant. Absolute unique special edition bottles. Look at how creative they are. I mean, they are selling the same product, but they are changing the bottles. They can change the size, changing the color, right? Shape, maybe. And very little bit, they might be changing the taste, right? But vodka is vodka. You can have different flavors. So, but you can see there are so many different ways to create an identity rather than only selling one boring product. You can change the identity. And the brand onion is another theory that explains the different components. We looked at the brand vision, a snapshot of the future of the brand values, a belief system, a way of working and communicating internally, the brand's personality. If you look at Harley Davidson has a personality. You don't see very thin young people driving or riding a Harley Davidson. It will be very rugged, hairy, masculine, American people riding a Harley Davidson. That's the personality of them. Positioning is how it is positioned in your mind. How is the brand positioned in the mind of the customer? The branding battle is not won in the marketplace. The branding battle is won in the mind of the customer. The branding battle is how you position your product and who has the best position. So brands need to be perceived or positioned as a offering that is innovative. You know, sometimes just like we change our hairstyles, we change how we dress, we change our car, all to send out signals of success. Just like that, a brand also needs to be jazzed up, and you need to have a refreshing appeal through your innovation. You need to refresh your brand. So you need to innovate not only the product itself, but the packaging, the way in which you sell your brand. It needs to have a refreshing appeal. If it's the same old thing that you sold in the 80s that you're selling today, right? Siddha Lepa or Vicks Balm or whatever it is, same old thing. The chances are you're going to have a lot of refreshing brands like Sparsilon, very colorful, very refreshing, vibrant, coming up with innovative methods to sell. Now, look at this example. This was actually an example that I personally saw when I went to the Dilma store in Sri Lanka in Colombo 7. When I went there for a Dilma cocktail, I saw this black tea extract, lemon and lime flavored black tea. It's a natural extract, low sugar. All you need to do is you need to put about 5 teaspoons of this and mix it with maybe ginger ale or something like. It's not non-alcoholic. And then you garnish it with whatever it is. And it's a nice, refreshing drink. And this is tea extract. So you can see how innovative this is. Rather than just drinking hot tea all the time and selling tea leaves, they're thinking of ways in which tea can be used as a cocktail, as an ingredient, innovative methods to sell the same product. So brand innovation refers to evolving and transforming a brand to stay relevant. How to evolve and transform a brand to stay relevant, competitive, and aligned to changing market dynamics or customer expectations, right? So a brand needs to stay vibrant. Brand trust authenticity and transparency. Now, this is about the credibility of the brand. So if you have a trustworthy brand, your job is done selling the brand, because you don't need to sell. People will rely on your brand. They will come and demand for your brand, ask for your brand. That is the authenticity, the transparency, the trust we're talking. 7 ways to build brand trust. Here are some methods. Deliver on your brand promise. Deliver on your brand promise. If you promise something, do it. Be consistent. Be consistent. Look at the important words here. Listen and learn. Keep your antennas open as a brand. Always watch your competitors. See what is out there in the world. Add value to your customers. Add value to your customers. Solve their problems. Create storytellers. Now, if you go to YouTube and watch the Dilma story, how Meryl J. Fernando started this company as a young tea taster, planter, how he started this company, how he had a vision to make this Sri Lankan brand a global brand. And he had 2 kids, Dilhan and Dilma, right? Dilhan and Malik. So he put the 2 names together and created the word Dilma with the 2 sons' first names. Dilma. That's how the Dilma brand was made. So if you look at what am I doing now? I'm telling you a story. If you look at even Cargill's, there's a nice story. Over the years, how the British created this Cargill company and how it evolved through generations. The landmark buildings, the types of businesses they did. John Keels has also said, a story like that in Sri Lanka. So you have to be able to create a story around your brand. Storytelling is important. And that's what inspires customers sometimes to wrap themselves around the brand. Be transparent and don't hard sell your brand. Don't hard sell your brand. Create value. To create value, people will demand for your brand. So can you see? This is how you build trust, authenticity, and transparency. Then we come into the brand architecture, the components of a brand's architecture. So the architecture is comprising of all these pieces. The status of the brand right now, the awareness levels. If you speak to 100 people on the road randomly and ask them, have you heard of this brand? Would they know? Can you recall this brand? The perception and the brand associations. What does this brand stand for? I'm going to show you some examples in the next few slides on perception, brand perception, brand attributes, brand positioning, the brand promise. We discussed that before. Undertake a brand equity study. You can engage some consultants for that to understand the value of your brand, the equity attributed, right? The brand's unique selling proposition, the explicit testable claim of the brand, the explicit testable claim of the brand is the unique selling proposition. And finally, the brand's reputation or image. I'm going to give you an example to sort of understand this. So let's understand the customer's perception through what we call projective techniques. I'm asking you to project your thoughts now, project your emotions. So if you look at the Dialog brand or Airtel brand or Mobitel brand, So all these three brands are in the telco space right now in Sri Lanka. Mobile, Airtel, Dialog, and Mobitel. Maybe Hutch is also there, right? So whom do you perceive as Dialog and why? So I've asked this question from many customers. I've asked this question from many students. Which animal is Dialog? Some say it is the lion. Why? When I ask why, they say the lion is the king of the jungle. Some say it is the monarch, the peacock, because the spread of branches, the network, the coverage. Some say it is the cow, because the cow is the most useful animal. So can you see the associations? All three associations right now were positive. Lion, king of the jungle. Cow, the most useful animal. Monera, peacock, coverage, network. Some say it is the dog. Why? I ask why. So dog, Dialog is the dog because the dog is only animal here you can keep on your lap and close to human beings. Now look at the explanation. So it's not the animal that matters. It is how you project your feelings. This is called projective techniques. How you project your feelings, the projection of your feelings, the perception of the brand. Is it positive or is it negative? So if I ask you to tell me who is Hutch here, you might, I don't know, whom do you think Hutch is? You might say, oh, this orangutan sitting in one place and eating, lazy. So it's not the animal, it's what you say to describe that brand. That is called a projective technique. We use this in qualitative research to understand the brand's emotions, the brand's positioning, the brand's feeling, the brand's perception. So you can ask many questions like that. Here's another one. Understanding the perception and positioning using projective techniques of the supermarkets that we have. So when I give you these brands, the players that are there, and show you to identify a picture, who is Cargill's? 99 out of 100 will say it is a three-wheeler. Why? Gedara appeal to the mass market. Is it a positive or negative comment? I'm sure Cargill's brand manager will like it. I'm sure Cargill's brand manager will like it because that's exactly where they're targeting their brand. If I say who's Keels, you might say it's a red car. But red color, they are green now. Those days they should be red, right? Or you might say they are like the jet, ready to take off, fight Cargills. Or like the sports car, very modern, very nice, clean, hygienic. So it's the association that matters. It's not the vehicle. If I say whose laughs, I don't know what you'll say. Maybe you'll say the old car, the vintage car, or the bike that you see there. Why do you say that? We don't know what it stands for. It's just there. It's a little old, little rundown. So maybe you will say things like that, right? So what matters is not the choice. What matters is your consumers' meaning that you give. Now, this is a very important. You can play around with pictures and project your feelings. You can try this in your industry as well to see how consumers think. And to amplify this further, what do you see in this picture? This example is used by Philip Kotler in his book, Marketing Management. What do you see in this picture? Ask yourself what you see in this picture. Some people will see a man playing a trumpet. Do you see the man playing a trumpet? If you do, your mind is, you are really like a child. You are not corrupt at all. But if you see the woman in this picture, can you see the woman in this picture? If you can't see the woman in this picture, your mind is not corrupted. If you first saw the woman before you saw the man playing the horn, you know what your mind is. Here's the woman. Can you see the face now? These are the lips. This is the nose. These are the two eyes. Right? So what it's trying to say is subliminal perception. Sometimes brands are communicating, advertising, but customers are not buying because they don't see what the brand manager is trying to communicate. Brand manager is trying to show a girl, but they see a man playing a trumpet. Customers see a man playing a trumpet. Do you see the rabbit and the duck? This is a very easy one on either side. Rabbit and duck. Right? That's the easy one. Do you see a Native American face and an Eskimo? Eskimo is turned the other way. Why am I showing this? These are real examples to show that your mind can only see some things, and you see some things only first. Second, you see the next thing. So it shows that our upbringing is different. How we perceive things as consumers are different. Can you see the old woman in this and the young woman in this? Can you see the old woman in this image and the young woman? This is another image used by Kotler in his book, Marketing Management. Perception is vivid. Perception is vivid. What it means is we see things differently. Society see things differently. So brand managers must be very careful in communicating their message. And let's come into some theory now. When we talk about positioning, singular word is Sthanagata Kirima. Sthanagata Kirima. How you position your brand in the mind of the customer is at the heart of marketing, brand positioning. If your brand is positioned well in the mind of the customer and you own the category, when you think of the category, number one, if I think I want to buy pizza right now, Pizza Hut is the number one brand, not Domino's in my mind. If I think of, right, I'm hungry right now and I'm thinking about Indian food. What is the restaurant that comes into your mind? Japanese food. What is the first choice of brand that comes into your mind? If I want to pay with my credit card right now, I have 4 credit cards. What brand comes into my mind first? Top of mind, recall, brand positioning. How the brand is positioned in your mind, positive or negative. I had a friend once who asked me, Louis, I drive a Toyota. I love Toyota. I love Toyota. I really love Toyota. So I only drive Toyota. So I like their service and I like the reliability of Toyota. So one friend asked me once, why don't you buy a BMW? I mean, So I looked at him and I said, look, he told me, why don't you upgrade to a BMW? Upgrade to a BMW. And I told him, it's not an upgrade for me, it's a downgrade for me. Because that's how the Toyota brand is positioned in my mind. He said, why do you say that? I said, how many times do you open your bonnet to check your water levels, whatever in front bonnet? He said, at least once a month. Sometimes to check the battery, sometimes the battery dies. Sometimes the water in the wipers go. And I told him, I have never opened my bonnet. I have never, ever opened my bonnet. Never. And I don't have a driver. I have never opened my bonnet. He said, what? You don't, what do you mean you never opened your bonnet? I said, I don't know how my bonnet inside looks. That's the reliability of Toyota. And I said, I have never opened it. The dealer, when I up for service, I call them every 3 months. They come home. 2 guys come in a bicycle, get into my car, keep the bicycle in my place, take it to the dealership. In the evening, they bring it back. Perfect. And they go in the car. And they've been doing this for many, many years. So reliable. So I said, you should upgrade to Toyota. So you can see the positioning. This is positioning. For me, Toyota is very big in my mind. For him, BMW is big in his head. You see, for all of us have different things positioned in our head, which are strong, hard-edged emotions. Unless I have a really bad experience with Toyota, I still will be convinced that that is the brand for me. That is brand positioning. Brand positioning is very, very strong because your mind, consumer's mind is a very, very sharp, strong place to occupy. So we talk about the brand domain, brand values, brand reflection, personality, brand assets, and brand heritage. I'll give you a meaning to that. The brand domain is where you compete, your target market. The brand heritage is the history, the culture of the brand. Some brands have a long heritage, 100 years, like Disney. Brand assets are the symbols, the attributes, like Nike's swoosh is a symbol. Safety for Volvo is an attribute. The brand's character or personality. Brand's character or personality. Reflection of the brand, how the brand relates to self. Yourself. Your self-identity. You say, I am a Toyota user and I'm proud about it. Sometimes you say, I only use Apple. I don't use anything else. We say that, no? Proudly we say. That means you're identifying with that brand. That's a reflection of yourself. Reflection. Your self-identity comes out and you're associating that brand with your self-identity and the values of the brand. Right? And then we look at the Capfera's brand identity prism. Capfera's brand identity prism. Now, the prism is this particular diagram is shape is called a prism. That's why it's called a prism. Right? And there's an example of Nike and Adidas brand prisms. So I'll give you, I'll take you to my book. This is from my book. I'll give you a description of each of these prism components. This is from my book. Right? The brand identity prism, Capfera's prism. You need to study these. There can be questions. Capfera states that these aspects can only come to life when the brand communicates with the consumer. Strong brands are, according to Capfera, capable of weaving all aspects into an effective whole as a way of coming to a concise, clear, appealing brand identity. Concise, clear, appealing brand identity. Below are the 6 aspects in detail. So the brand psyche, right, are the physical aspects of the brand, like the logo, the color, the icons, the physical aspects, physical features. Some people recall the brand with the physical aspects, the color, the shape, the logo. The personality of the brand is the personification of the brand. Sometimes you might use a brand ambassador, just like you have football stars used by different brands. Mbappe, Ronaldo, Messi. You have in the basketball world, you have Michael Jordan used by Nike, right? So you can see how the person has really the personality. Tiger Woods was used by Nike. The personality of that brand also has been formed by the person. The culture, the value system of the brand. If you look at brands like Harley Davidson, has a culture, it's a cult. Coca-Cola, McDonald's appeals to the American values. Mercedes-Benz to the German values, the brand culture. Then the relationship that the brand forms with its customers, the association, a mother and child, for instance, in the case of Anchor. If you see an Anchor ad, you'll always see a mother and a child, the love of a mother and a child. You'll always see that, the relationship of a brand. The reflection of the consumer and the self-image. Now, the reflection of the consumer and the self-image. The reflection of the consumer is the consumer's perception of what the brand stands for and the brand provides. Example, Jaguar reflects success to others. So the reflection is what the brand stands for to others. But self-image is what the brand stands to you. What is the private statement the brand is making to you? If reflection is the consumer's outward mirror, who they are, self-image is the target owner's internal mirror. What do I feel? I mean, a good example here is a bit crude, but I need to talk about it. Some underwear brands, right? Now, if you look at the underwear industry, you have Jockey, you have Hugo Boss, you have Armani, you have Envoy by Hamidia, you have so many brands, no? You can go to Peta and buy, you can Payment buy, you can go to Designer and buy, so many places. Walmart and buy, you can go to Sainsbury's, Tesco, so many places. Prada, Gucci, everyone has. Similarly, I'm talking about female underwear also, from Victoria's Secret to, La Senza to so many brands. Now, why would you sometimes buy branded underwear? No one sees it. It is for you to feel good, for you to feel good about yourself when you look at the mirror. Isn't that right? So that is self-image. The brand is talking to you. What you want the brand to talk to others is the reflection. Right? Self-image is also important. So if you look at these examples of the Capferous brand identity prism, here's an example of Adidas and Nike. So you won't get an example, of course, to do a prism because you're doing an exam, but you can get some questions on the meaning of these areas. Okay. And that takes us to the end of this chapter. At the end, we look at, again, the importance of personas. I think we covered this in detail in the previous chapter. Personas. You know what personas are. And the customer journey map. The customer journey map. We did this in the previous chapter. So in summary, let's quickly summarize. Here we looked at some key terms today. I want you to watch all the videos and read everything I've given you. with regards to the assessment criteria. How brands are defined and positioned to add value to organizations. We looked at the alignment of the vision, mission, and the brand proposition, and the different meanings of a brand, CAPFORUS brand identity prism components, and finally, customer persona and customer journey. I will see you in the next assessment criteria 2.2.